is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my three great co-hosts, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hannah. And guys, we're all back. All four of us are back. It's been a while since we've had the entire team here at Guarani Vision together to talk about the thing that we adore in football, and obviously connecting it with what's been going on in Paraguay. I know that there's always been some kind of shocking news, you would say, and shocking, I guess, for Fede's case, waking up into a so-called earthquake, apparently. I mean, I don't know how people would like to feel as if though what is the rate of an earthquake over there, but that was something that I woke up to this morning, seeing it on Twitter. But other than that, I mean, obviously we do have a lot to talk about. Obviously, we'll talk about what's been going on with the Paraguay national team in their final two games of the year, see what Guillermo Barros has been able to do with this side, obviously leading to Copa Paraguay, where we get into the nitty gritty, but also a little bit of drama happening as well. And also just lead it up with the league. I mean, obviously the Clausura is coming to an end. It's hard to believe that we're almost in October, guys. So we're just a couple of weeks away from a champion to be crowned. And, I'm excited and I'm happy that all of us are here to talk about it. So let's get someone that has been definitely feeling a lot of shocks recently. I don't know if it's from the football perspective, from the natural, from the earthquake perspective. I don't know, man. I mean, Fede, how are you, man?
Yeah, you guys seem more concerned about me with these earthquakes than I was. I did not even feel them. Hey, guys, it's nice to see all of you, especially Maria that's back in action after a while. I did not see a football god like Roberto did this week watching Messi beat over Jamaica. I did not live through a hurricane like Maria and Ralph had to. But yeah, we had an earthquake happening here in Paraguay. That was kind of weird. We don't usually get those. I don't know what's going on in the world. We'll have to ask a specialist about that. But very serious, happy to see our loved ones, especially in Florida, that are okay with this hurricane happening. I did not know if we were going to be able to do this episode this week because of that situation straight through Florida. Thankfully, our guys in Miami did not have much trouble more than rain. They'll probably talk about that in just a bit. And yeah, we actually had some rain here in Paraguay. Like the cold does not want to go away. Still kind of, you still got to wear those long sleeves around here, and plenty of football going around also, Roberto. Even though, yeah, we've had international matches with Paraguay playing the last friendlies of the year. We've also had the second division almost coming to an end with Luqueño and Trinidense making their way to the top league. What we've had this Copa Paraguay that you were just talking about, we have the final four now, the best four teams of the tournament. We have the league race, we have the Clausura coming close to an end. We have that title race. It looked like it was about between three teams. Now it looks like it's just between two teams. We definitely got to talk about that. We have so much to talk about. So let's get this ball rolling. Let's get this episode going, Roberto.
Let's do it indeed. And I'll go straight to one part of Miami in Ralph's case, because obviously you did mention Luqueño there. Ralph, as many people may or may not know, used to live in Luque when he was in Paraguay. So he definitely has a affiliation with Sportivo Luqueño. And it's been a long year for them, actually. We talked about them last year, about how they went through so much chaos. And I think we all can debate about how big Luqueño is. I think there was like a debate over the week about saying what's the biggest team in Paraguay outside of Olimpia and Cerro. And, you have the Libertad, you have Guarani, but you also have Luqueño in that debate. And I think even after all this kind of chaos that they've been going through over the last year, getting relegated back in December, to see them back into the first tier, I think is, for any Paraguayan football fan, you would say, who has always been accustomed to seeing them, it's good to see them back, definitely in the top tier, because them, and I think their fan base, as we know, is very, very fanatic, always supporting their team. It's always a good thing to see them back into the first division.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very passionate fan base, and I think this year was almost like a kind of reconciliation between the club and its fans after all they've gone through. You had this hardcore group that followed them all across the country, because Intermedia is much more spread out than Primera. So they were traveling and traveling in their hundreds, often 1,000, going to these small towns across Paraguay, like filling it with color, with blue and gold, as is their colors. And there was times it was looking a bit hairy. When I was over in Paraguay in June, they lost to San Lorenzo at home, and they were not happy at the time because at the moment it looked like they were going to slip up in that title race. But they pulled it together with Miguel Zasu, who is kind of a legend at Luque, because he had got them to win the Apertura, the 2007 Apertura. And so he was back to pick them up and take them out of the second division, and maybe he will stay on for next year. We'll see. But it's a really big moment for them back where they belong. I think it's very similar to in England, where you get in the Premier League when somebody comes back like a Leeds United or a Nottingham Forest, somebody that's been a big club, and they don't quite sit right in the lower leagues, because you always expect them to read their names when you're reading through the table. And for Lucania, they hadn't been relegated for about 50 years, so it was very strange to not see them in there this year. So they're back where they belong, and very happy for it. And also good for Trinidense. Trinidense are a bit more of a yo-yo club, I would say, but they've had a really good campaign to get themselves back into the top division. And it's nice because Trinidense actually have a stadium that's kind of fit for purpose for Primera. So a lot of the teams this year, like Resistencia, for example, have been playing at their stadium. So I think that's good to see. And then just while we're on the topic, on the other end of the scale is River Plate. River Plate have been relegated from Intermedia, which is kind of incredible to see how quickly they've gone down to third division, having been in not just Primera. Remember, they're in Sudamericana. So they've gone down from Sudamericana, and they've had like 2 years of relegation, and they're now going to be in the third tier of Paraguayan football, which is a real shame for them, because it's a very old club in Paraguay, a very traditional club, and that's sad to see how they've fallen down. But good for Luqueña and all their fans. They're very happy.
Totally a passionate fan base over there, and also in Trinidense as well. Definitely they have their fair share of fans over there. And yeah, it's kind of unfortunate to see what's going on with River Plate. But again, another historical team that's always been over there, always had their kind of struggles, but to see them now go back into the third division, I think is definitely a disappointment. But I think what isn't a disappointment, I go to Maria on this one, because I think, as much as I don't want to relate the national team with disappointment, I think, yeah, it's been a frustrating, I would say, process when going into the World Cup. And we've done so many episodes where this team kind of, and we're going to lead into this conversation with the national team about their games in Europe. I think obviously, it kind of feels weird. Like, everyone's talking about the World Cup, their teams are going to be playing in it. There's some that are not in it as well. But, you look at this national team and, they were able to get good results over the last few months against Mexico, now the UAE and Morocco. It just, I don't know, it feels frustrating just like seeing this team where you're like, really, like, where was this beforehand? Where was this back in the qualification process? But nevertheless, I think you have to build from that. And yeah, I guess, kind of asking you about this, like, it really has been frustrating to say the least. And I think it's okay to feel that way as well, when it comes to this national team, because we adore it. I think some people really like it. There is sometimes some division when it comes to like these teams, because maybe it's kind of a way for the players from, their clubs, from Cerro Olimpia, to go. They're like, oh, why should they play for them when they're at risk of getting injured, when I want them to perform for our national team? And yeah, I think it's just the way it goes. But ultimately, I think it's what we have at the moment, really.
Yeah, you're right there, Roberto. Hey, guys. I'm happy to be back again after a couple episodes. I think it's definitely frustrating how, now that they're not in competition, they are looking so much better than they did when they were actually competing for a spot in the World Cup. But you know what? You have to look at it on the bright side. They have been performing really well, which is really a good sign for them. And I think that they're going to take away the good parts of it. They've been unbeaten. I think the last the last 4 games, and it's been 11 years since they've been unbeaten like this, and haven't gotten a goal on them. So it's really just amazing to see what they're doing. And I guess they're growing. They really are growing. They have some stuff to work on, obviously, and we'll talk about it more in depth right now. But in all sense, I think it's more than frustrating. I think it's good. It's a good sign. And I think fans should be really excited to see what's coming from this. Getting ready for the next couple of tournaments that they'll have, and hopefully the next World Cup, which will be here in the US, and Mexico and Canada. But it'll be, I think, a long road, but a good one.
Definitely. It definitely is. The road to 2026 begins here. And, I'll go to you, Fede, on this one, because obviously we saw 2 friendlies happening during this international break. The team went to Europe to play a couple friendlies, one in Austria against the UAE, where it was a tight affair. I think certainly we spoke about how they should beat the UAE. And, even though it was kind of a results that kind of was, kind of typical of Paraguay of, maybe low scoring, Fabian Balbuena getting the headed goal in the 85th minute. And then, 4 days later, which I think, aside from the game against the UAE, where obviously every time it's good to win, I think the game against Morocco was definitely the one that's more impressive, because obviously Morocco is a national team that's going to the World Cup, but also they have a lot of good players that are playing based in Europe in the top 5 leagues. I think we spoke about that. And I don't know. I think, Fede, going to you on this one, and really, your kind of vibe into this national team now that they really aren't playing for anything besides trying to compete and to see where they stack up against the rest of the world. I think to get these 2 results, and now it's unbeaten in 4, you could say. It's been a while that we can say that Paraguay haven't lost in 4 games. I think Guillermo Barros Schelotto and a lot of these players can leave their European tour on a positive note. And I don't know what you think, but I think it's been a positive 2 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you play 2 games and you don't lose any of them, and one of those games is against a team that's going to play the World Cup, I think that's totally positive, right? And especially when you come back with the sense that you were able to compete in both of those games, especially in the second one against Morocco. I think both games were very different, especially because of the opponents. I mean, one team has a base of players that's been playing for a while, like Morocco's probably the best national team they've ever had. That's why they're making it to the World Cup. And then, the first game, it was a team that couldn't make it to the World Cup, just starting a new process, just like us. And so we had a lot of attack. We had a lot of chances at goal. I'm falling in love. I've always loved Julio Enciso. This is not new. I've always mentioned and prized his game, and I'm happy to see that he's made his way to the national team. And now that we can use him because he's playing in Europe, he's taking his first steps over there. The role that Schelotto's given him, I mean, he's given him a very big role in this team. He put him in both of these games, and if he could have played against Mexico, he probably would have put him in that game also, because you're seeing that Schelotto wants to give that role to these young players now. That was something that we talked about before. I wanted to see that young blood. I wanted to see those players that are hungry. And I totally get your vibe, Roberto. Yeah, the World Cup is right around the corner. You went to 2 games that, Argentina's going to the World Cup. You had that whole atmosphere around you. You went to that Mexico against Paraguay. Mexico's going to the World Cup. You had that around you. We're not going to the World Cup. Get over it, Roberto. We got to think about 2026. And that's where our head is right now. And I'm loving that the players are feeling committed to it, because they're not thinking about right now, well, we're not going to the World Cup. We're crying over this. No. They're fighting every game, and they're trying to win every game. I mean, we didn't test out many players in these 2 games. I mean, look at the subs, especially against Morocco. They came in pretty late. Why? Because Schelotto thought that, hey, we're competing in this game. We might even win this game. We're fighting in this. So I think he's trying to build that confidence in the team also, that we got to win one game at a time. And that's just how we got to do it right now. I mean, we got to try to build a solid base of players, but especially we got to start winning. And hey, it's been 4 in a row now. We haven't lost. So I'm on Maria's team on this one. It's been 11 years. So I'm taking the positive out of this.
Yeah, it's been 11 years since we go unbeaten this long, but also is 4 games without conceding a goal, which you have to go right back to Tata Martino and 2011's like the run coming into the Copa America and the beginning of that Copa America. So that's a really interesting thing. I thought that we haven't conceded a goal despite not having much possession in these games, right? Because especially against Morocco, a very attacking team, they got very close. Ziyech hits the post, right? The inside of the post as well. So it was really close. But we've still managed to keep these clean sheets. And there is something about this sort of grit and determination and will to win that Barros Schelotto is building up, which seems to be like the first step, because first you just have to not get beat and not be down on confidence, and then you can start building things maybe more around this Enciso. My kind of word of caution about Enciso is I'm just not sure if he's being used the right way, because against Morocco especially, he was coming really deep to get the ball and playing almost like a 10 and trying to be a playmaker, but that's not his strength, because you saw he gave the ball away quite a bit when he's trying to thread passes through to someone like Almiron. Really, you want it the other way around. You want Enciso on that last defender, because you want to try and isolate him one-on-one to beat defenders. And I thought it was really interesting that in both games, he was taken off for Sebas Ferreira. But I would kind of like to see him play with Sebas Ferreira, or at least play with a 9. Because of course, Paraguay played without like a recognized striker. You have Derlis, you have Enciso, you have Almiron, all very fluid, flexible runners, but you didn't have like your target in the middle. And it was Enciso doing a lot of the hold-up work, because he's so good technically and he's strong. He's got very strong in his few months in Europe. So he was doing some of that hold-up and back to goal work, but you don't really want him there because he's not being used to his full potential. So hopefully we can find this way to build the team around him, but around his strengths, and not getting him doing all the work. Just if you think, I know he's not Messi, but if you think of Messi when 2014 kind of World Cup, where he ends up having to do everything for the team, and that wasn't his strength. And now you see Messi playing with De Paul, and he's like much freer. Then he's got a much easier role in the team and more effective role. So that's with Enciso as well. We want him to do a lot, but we want to do it in his strengths and in his final third of the pitch.
I guess to go to Maria on this one, I think one player that, I was so happy to see, and I just realized he scored his first ever goal for Paraguay in these friendlies, Fabian Balbuena, a player that we've always talked about. Definitely someone that I think we know what his experience is like. We've seen him play in Brazil, in Europe as well. It's really interesting to see that trust is given to him, given the fact that, we've had the likes of Gomez and Alonso and many other center backs. Here comes Balbuena saying, no, I can do this as well. Not only can I defend, I could also score as well. So I think for Barros Schelotto, I think he recognizes that someone like Balbuena, who, everyone has his debate on them. I personally think he's a good player, and I think he should be on the team. Whether or not he should start is a different question, but certainly now, I think, given his performances and, keeping these clean sheets, I think he has to be on that squad, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, I think that now Schelotto is looking the way, like Fede said, that the way to do it is to have the younger players come in. He has to look at the younger generation, and someone like Balbuena asking to be in it means, hey, I want to be part of this team and I want to show my worth. So Schelotto's also listening to his players, which is very important as a coach. You can't just go with what you want. You have to listen to your team. So for Schelotto to be trying new things, I think that's the point of these friendlies, and to continue to do that towards Copa America soon. That'll help a lot, and I think that's gonna give him an idea of what could work best. Obviously, we have the players that have been there, the senior players. Are probably maybe not going to be there so long, and maybe not for the next World Cup. But for the next generation, he has to play around with these players. He has to see what's better for them. I don't see him not trying this new method of using the new players and all that.
I mean, there really is no risk, you would say. There's no pressure at this point because, again, there's no competitions to play. So you can experiment. You can try to see what works. And Fede, I think to just close it off here, I think it's the only way to go because, like Maria said, the Copa America is the next tournament that they have to play. That won't be for another 2 years. Obviously, it's important to see what kind of friendlies they'll get in the next year, what kind of competitions they'll be there to play for. But ultimately, for someone like Barros Schelotto, I think it's really now this case of trying to use these players and to see what kind of idea works, and to stay consistent with it. You don't want a case where you have a manager leaving like it was with Osorio and Berizzo. But now, if this is someone that really wants to stick upon the team until the 2026 World Cup, I guess it's the only way to move forward on this case.
Yeah, hopefully the players that are being called up lately, they can then maintain their level also, right, in their club. Especially some of them are just starting out, like Matias Galarza. I mean, for Matias Galarza, these have been his first games in the national team, and he's barely playing at his club. So you kind of have to follow that situation also. What's going on with each player in their clubs? Hopefully, none of them get injured either. I'm seeing that up until now, it's everything is positive, Roberto. I mean, we're bringing players back that were at a certain moment important to the national team, like Derlis Gonzalez, like Lorenzo Melgarejo. I mean, these are players that I think to the process of trying to go back to World Cup, I think these are players that can be important. That they can take that weight off their shoulders of the young kids. And for me, yeah, it's good to see Balbuena back in action in that defense, that he gets an opportunity for Junior Alonso, to see that Junior Alonso can still play that left back, especially when we have a tough player on the opposite team. So he was used there against Morocco to kind of stop Hakimi, and sometimes we've used more attacking left backs and right backs. So you have a coach that has an open mind. He's not just he's not stubborn. He's not looking at just one way of playing it. And I'm kind of liking that from Schelotto also. He's trying new things. He's trying it around. He's looking at his players, and he hasn't brought that many players in. I mean, he's still waiting from the best of Almiron. He's trying to mix it up there with Julio Enciso. But for me, the big puzzle still in this team is the midfield. I mean, for a certain time, it was Andres Cubas and Richard Ortiz. I think they are going to be the starting midfield as of right now. They weren't available for these two games, unfortunately. So he kind of had to mix it around. And hey, Brian Ojeda did not look bad at all. Matias Villasanti did okay. But I think that spot and just what Ralph was talking about, the nine, the center forward position, I think those are two places that are still kind of rocky for me as of the 11, as of the starting team, as of the competitions that are going to come, the Copa America, and obviously looking up ahead for the World Cup and the road that's coming along.
Absolutely. So we'll definitely see what happens to this national team moving forward as we switch gears now to the Copa Paraguay, a competition that is certainly very much important for a lot of these teams. And we saw some drama happening in the last couple of hours, basically in the last 12 hours, where the game between Libertad and Guarani was suspended again. A game involving Libertad was suspended, if we remember, back in the round of 16. Libertad was playing Olimpia in a very heated game, obviously due to some, history, you would say, towards Libertad and Olimpia as of recently, be it from a political standpoint or even from a football standpoint. Libertad were winning 4-0 before the game had to be abandoned due to fan trouble. And we saw that again, Ralph, again in Villa Iseta Luis Alfonso Gianni, where Libertad and Guarani took against each other. And then there were also some kind of fan unrest, you would say. And, we'll talk about that in a minute. But of course, we saw Guarani qualify and win on penalties against Libertad, meaning that we have our semifinals set up, guys. And it's an interesting one because on the one end, you have Guarani and Nacional, two teams that obviously are very much consistent in the top division, usually always fighting for titles, and I think for them, one of them being in the final will be huge for them. But on the other end, we see Atlético Tembetaru, a team that is based in the second division that didn't get promoted, actually, because obviously Sportivo Luqueño and Trinidense went up, and Sportivo Ameliano, a team that was promoted this season, and it looks as if though they're bottom of the relegation average at the moment. So it's really a David in this kind of context, you would say a David versus Goliath final that we're going to get between in here in the Copa Paraguay. But I guess to go into the fan unrest really in Libertad Guarani, I guess you could, if you want to go into more in depth about what's been going on. And it's we spoke about this beforehand. It's really nothing new that we've seen in Paraguay, and it's kind of stained a little bit of how good Paraguay football could be, that a lot of neutrals or even those that indeed enjoy it unfortunately are exposed to as well.
It was a strange night last night, actually, because you had disturbances in Chile, you had disturbances in the Boca game, I think it was Boca in Argentina, and you had the Guarani Libertad. It was all happening on one night across South American football, which is, I don't know, maybe it's just a rare coincidence, or maybe we're starting to see something socially to be aware of, because it's strange to hear in 3 games in different countries. One thing, I guess, to think about is it's these midweek games where the policing maybe isn't as strong as it is at weekends. The game, in the case of Guarani Libertad, is being played in a relatively small stadium in Villa Lisa. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the ASU, because there's this Ode Sur games being hosted by Asuncion. So maybe they put the game outside of Asuncion because of that coming up. I'm not sure, but it didn't really make sense to play such a big game in a smaller stadium. And there were very few police. I mean, when you see if you see any of the kind of cell phone footage, there's really very few police. And the few police that are there that aren't the riot police are not even getting involved. They're kind of just stepping out because they don't want to be a part of this. And that's partly, I guess, because they're like, oh, we'll leave it to the riot police, but it's partly they're not trained for it. So, I mean, there was just a lot of under preparation. Then I guess the other thing to think about is, why is it happening again in a Libertad game? And I think that's where politics is starting to seep into football, as we talked about last time, because somebody ran onto the pitch with an American flag from one of the Guarani fans, and this is related again to the honorary owner of Libertad, Horacio Cartes, who is still under seemingly investigation by the US. There's rumors in Paraguay all the time that he's going to be extradited. These are just rumors at the moment. But this is all kind of coming into football, it seems, when Libertad are playing. There's this sort of undercurrent, and it's all, remember, building up that next year there's elections in Paraguay. So I think, unfortunately, we might see this towards the end of the season as Libertad play. But yeah, I mean, on the pitch, if we can go onto the pitch, it was an incredible game that Libertad managed to lose, really. I don't know how they didn't come away winners. They had this one chance towards the end where I think there's like 3 goal line clearances from Guarani, but even in the penalty shootout, they were on top for a moment in the penalty shootout until they failed their last 3 penalties, which gave Guarani the victory, and they're off to another semi-final. So it must be a tough one for Garnero as well, because they're not out of the title race, as I'm sure we'll talk about, but you feel this is what they wanted to pick up. This is the trophy they wanted, because they've already won the Apertura, but they've missed out on this chance. And Guarani having not a very good season really, but they have this chance of some silverware, and this is also for them a way of qualifying for the Sudamericana should they mess it up through the league by not getting enough points.
The big team in this Copa Paraguay, Roberto, is Atlético Tembeta. This is the team we got to talk about. Let's not talk about the hooligans. They're going to keep running the show. If they want to stop the games, they're going to stop the games. They've done it all year long. Cerro Porteño, Olimpia, now maybe even Libertad, they all have sanctions on them, but they still go to their games. They still do whatever they want. The police does not run the game. And Atlético Tembeta, this is the team we got to talk about. This team has been in Copa Paraguay in the semifinals the last 2 times around, so they clearly know what they're doing, pretty much with the same base of players. And when you have on one side Sportivo Emiliano going against Tembetar, it means that one of these two teams is going to make it to the finals. So they have big chances of playing the Copa Sudamericana, Roberto, which I think would just be big for any of these two clubs at the end of the year. I mean, to make it to an international stage, it would just be humongous for these two teams. So I'm rooting for them, especially to win it for the Copa Paraguay, just to have a big surprise. I would love to see it happen. I thought Rubio New had a chance after beating Cerro Porteño, but they weren't even close to it after doing that. So it's all on Atlético Tembetarú right now, a third division team. They beat two top division teams. They have a lot of people now behind their backs because it is not the first time they've done it. So Maria, this is one of the teams to follow, I think, in Copa Paraguay. They're just one step away. Emiliano has their hands on trying to stay in the first division and trying not to be relegated. I think Tembetarú has a really nice chance of being the big surprise in this Copa Paraguay.
Can you imagine a third division team winning the domestic cup competition? Can you imagine that?
That would be awesome. I think it'll be I think this is the time that we can see these small teams, because we're always talking about the big guys, and in the Primera División, but we often forget, we have our expert here on second division, Ralph, talking about our second division teams, but we never really hear about the third division. So I think it's like a great time to really get to know them. Most of the teams I've never even heard of. So it's really exciting to see what they have, what they can bring into these competitions, and hopefully one day they can get into the first division. And also just seeing good football, not all this politics involved like we're talking about earlier. Just seeing what our country has for football. And it's really exciting to see this. Hopefully they do get a good run and maybe get a big win.
I can tell you a couple of things about Tembetarú quickly, I guess. I mean, it's the club where Nelson Aido Valdez came through. So when he was very young, he went to Tembetarú, and they used to have a stadium on Eusebio Ayala, for people that know Asuncion. And he actually slept underneath the stands of that stadium, because that's where a lot of the young players from different clubs in the countryside, when they're coming to the city, they would stay. And I've been there. I mean, it's disused in terms of for Tembetarú, but they use it still. I think Libertad use it for their youth games still. But I've seen that place, and that's where the Nelson Aido Valdez story kind of begins. But also they do have some plans to try and build a new stadium. At the moment, is a club that's been around for years. They've been around since 1912, the same as someone like Cerro. So it's a very old club, but they've never really been, at least in recent years that I can remember, they've never really been in Primera or somewhere like that. So it's not a club like we were talking earlier about, say, River Plate, that's had their tastes of success. So this is really a huge moment for them. They're guaranteed 50 million guaraníes, which is about $7,000, which is nice money for them. But I mean, the winner this year gets the equivalent of like $80,000. I mean, for Tembetarú, that would be huge. And then the qualification to Sudamericana. So it's a real huge opportunity they managed to get to without really any stars. I mean, you look at that team, they 2 years ago, I think, or last year, when they got to the semifinals, they picked up a few like really good players, old players, in the late 30s, that had some quality. But at the moment, I don't think there's anybody, a real standout player from that team. So it's just been a great effort to get here, and on the verge of success, of huge success.
Yeah, they actually have really young players. That's what they're actually trying to do in that third division. Some teams actually have that kind of model into trying to have young players and try to sell them to Argentina and try to take them out to Brazil really young, not go through like the first division teams, try not to go through the big teams, even though Ramon Sosa was probably the last big one to come out of Tembetarú, right? He went through Olimpia, and now he's almost champion. He's in those first spots in Argentina with Gimnasia. He's having a great tournament over there. He's probably the last star to come out of Tembetarú. Ralph mentioned one of those historic players like Nelson Aedo, many players that come out of that. And Tembetaru has been trying to find their way around, Roberto. I mean, they started out in one city. Now they moved to another one in Villa Lisa. And the last thing I heard is they actually bought a ground in Luque. So they might actually move now to Luque. But so, yeah, this is a team that has over 100 years of history, but it's still trying to find their way into this modern football, right? Most teams don't even have a stadium. Most teams have lost their stadium, their grounds in those third divisions. So for teams like Tembetaru to make this money, to get this exposure, to be out on the media, on the local media daily, it's huge for them to be on the semifinals.
Definitely, it's very huge. Their president, Daniel Campo, also known as the agent of Miguel Almirón, is certainly someone that's kind of spearheading this kind of project of modernizing a
he's
team.
Got a corner to it, right? Also, he's got a corner to it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you got a corner to yourself, you're like, yeah. I'm like that has enough. That's enough clout that you need in Paraguay there. But yeah, no. Again, I think obviously the Guarani Nacional game is certainly one that I think a lot of people will definitely pay more attention about. But certainly, if we get a final where there could be a team from the third division or a team that might indeed get relegated to the second division making that final, I think from a neutral perspective, at least from all of us here, I don't know if any of you guys are closet Guarani or Nacional fans. I think we'd like to see one of those teams win that competition, because not only would it be good for them, but I think it's a good story. I mean, how many teams not just in world football, but I think just in general, I mean, like I said, a third division team winning a domestic cup. I mean, I remember second division teams winning it, but I've never, and Ralph, Maria, and Fede, if you guys want to interfere or anything, I have never heard of a third division team winning that and then playing into a continental competition. That would be definitely something for the world record books, I think, Ralph.
Yeah, I'm racking my brains. I can't think of one, but I have a WhatsApp group that I'm gonna check that through, because they will be able to tell me if I'm wrong. But I think it would be a first for sure.
Indeed. So let's we'll definitely see what's going on in the Copa Paraguay, and then obviously all eyes are on there, but also all eyes now on to the local league. Obviously, we're still in the nitty gritty, the halfway point of the Clausura, where as it stands right now, Cerro Porteño and Nacional are level on points with 28, but a big goal difference was given to Cerro Porteño over the last few days, where they smashed Tacuarembó, a Tacuarembó side that we talked about, guys, about under Ivan Almeida, who looked like a team that, you know, kind of the little engine that are kind of really punching above their weight, really a recently promoted side. And, you know, for them to get smashed in the way that they did was kind of disappointing for them, but also for Cedro's case, it shows that, yeah, even though we're kind of getting these kind of results that are wins, it's not been convincing, but they definitely needed this one. Fede, really, in this side, and Nacional as well, dropping points. Well, you know, they won over, of course, a few days ago, but, you know, I think it really is, I don't know, man. Do we start to say it's a two-team race? I mean, yes, Libertad and Olimpia still have to play, and if Libertad wins, that closes the gap to 3 points, but I'm just looking at how they've been performing over the last few weeks, and even Olimpia as well, who, if they win, that they get a 4-point gap. But I don't know. I just feel like the title is probably going to head to Barrio Obrero, because obviously both these teams do play in Barrio Obrero. They're separated by a few streets over there in Asunción. So I think I'm starting to feel as if though the Clausura title is going to end up in Barrio Obrero, whether or not it'll be in the Tricolor side or the Azulgrana side. That's still up for debate.
And Nacional has really been able to keep up, right? Just winning and winning. I mean, I don't think a lot of people had this team as one of those that could make it to the end of the year, as being there with Libertad, with Olimpia, with Cerro Porteño. Cerro Porteño has been probably the team that has been able to make the most points. That's why they've been up there pretty much all year. Libertad has had their ups and downs. Now they lost in Copa Paraguay also, so it's not that good of a year, or at least the way they're ending it. But they can't fight this tournament, this Clausura, till the end. But for Cerro Porteño, hey, when we were thinking no team is looking like a champion right now, no team is looking like they can sweep everybody off, Cerro Porteño does this. They win 5-0 in front of their fans. They do it with a statement. They do it playing really well. I mean, if they keep up this rhythm, I think they can take it. But Nacional is getting excited about it. They have players that have never been champions. They have hungry players. So and they have a fan base that's just growing and growing. They don't usually have that many fans with them on every game, but when they start winning, you see those traditional fans coming to the stand and giving the party, and it's really nice to see that environment also on the national games. And I don't know if Bolivia has enough to make it right now. Bolivia looks like they have enough trouble of their own to try to build a new team and to see what they're going to keep for next year. So it looks like it's going to be kind of hard for Olimpia, but they still got to fight with this Clausura. So I'm not saying it's game over for Libertad or for Olimpia yet, but what I saw from Cerro Porteño last week around, if they can keep it up, and Chiqui Arce mixed it up a lot in this team lately, but he's just finding solutions. And just when you think that Chiqui Arce can't take anything out of this team anymore, he comes out with a team that won 5-0. So I'm really on Cerro Porteño's side right now. I'm really watching this team just after what they did on this last week. Wow.
Yeah, they have this habit of doing this when you just think they've run out of energy and they're not going anywhere. And specifically after the loss in the Clásico to Olimpia was like, I think even people were saying, I think, maybe Chiqui Arce, did we talk about it? I think we talked about it. People saying maybe he should step aside, maybe they're, and well, he's just shown once again that there's no better manager in terms of getting the best out of what group of players he has, because he had injuries and he made it work. I mean, Claudio Aquino wasn't injured, he was ill, he got pneumonia, and even though he's coming back now, he found the solution playing Pachi Carrizo on his own, and suddenly Carrizo looks a much better player, actually playing, when I say alone, as in the main creative player, instead of having to play alongside Aquino, and he's come into his own. And actually, he's doing what Aquino did last year, because last year you had Claudio Aquino towards the end of the season become really important for Cerro. And so he's just finding these kind of moments and getting the right player in the right situations. The 5-0 was a huge surprise for me. I mean, partly because I didn't think Tacuary were going to be that bad, but also because Cerro just don't score a lot of goals. It's not what they've been doing. But they come out with this result, and I think they're really building up momentum. They have 2 games now that they should win in theory. They have Sol de America, and I think maybe it's 12 de Octubre or it's one of the two, or Emiliano. And then Nacional similarly have Sol de America next week, and this week I think they have 12 de Octubre or Emiliano. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the teams. But basically, there's 2 games they should both win, and then you get the Clásico again, and then you get Nacional against Guarani, and the week after you get Nacional Cerro. So it's like it's all building up to these next 4 games are kind of the key ones, and I do see it as a 2-horse race at the moment. I mean, it's hard to write off Libertad. Remember, they have a game in hand, and Libertad have so much strength and depth, but you sort of feel they were pushing for the Copa Paraguay. They've lost that. They're losing a bit of momentum there, so I really do think it's between these 2 to fight it out. And if you had to pick, you would pick Cerro because of their history, but I think on form I wouldn't write off Nacional, and certainly don't write off Nacional's manager Pedro Saravia, because Saravia has also won the league title as well, so he knows what it takes to go the distance. So I think we're in for a really good race for these next few weeks.
There's really been always a trend with Cerro Porteño in pretty much every tournament. They tend to stay at the top most of the time at first position for most of the competition, and suddenly at the end is when they go all at it, and it's really just like that excitement that Cerro Porteño brings every time. It makes them, one of the best in the leagues, and that's why I think they keep winning.
And I think, they definitely don't make it easy on them, because certainly, I think when you do have that kind of consistency, you would think it would stay forever. But, there are those games where they kind of drop points, or even if they do win, it's not as convincing. But I think they always have been contenders. And even after like these kind of like mini crises that we've all spoken about over the last year or so, and how Chiqui Arce has kind of been able to stir the ship. That they've been through rough waves and rough oceans and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately they always seem to be there. They always seem to contend, and I think that's kind of what Chiqui Arce has been known for being able to stir ships. And even after all these kind of like criticisms about whether or not you should step aside, like Ralph said, I think Fede, to really close it on here, it's interesting to see that, they've always kind of been contending for this, because that's where they're at. That's kind of what their MO is. And I think, whether or not they don't win, yeah, it'd be disappointing. It would be absolutely disappointing if they don't win this Clausura. But at the same time, it also wouldn't be, I don't know, man. I just feel like after everything that they've been through, it also would not be the worst thing, because maybe on the day Nacional were just better, and they have every right to be crowned champions if they do indeed go the distance and win it.
Yeah, on an overall kind of watching everything, it would be a good year, but being so close to 2 titles and not winning one of them in a big team, it could be a volume for the team, especially on the budget. But yeah, they're building something in Cerro Porteño. They're obviously going to have to sell at the end of the year. There's rumors around Alexis Duarte, the defender. He's getting more and more offers every week. He's probably one of those players that Cerro's going to look to sell. But the rest, they're probably going to stay. So they're trying to build something. And then you had a couple of visitors also here in the country. Roberto's reminding me that the Red Bull people came around. Yeah, they had a couple of meetings with the Cerro Porteño board members. Also, we don't really know where that's going to go. If that was just the first step, if they're actually talking about doing business. I actually asked the president of Cerro Porteño about this, and he said that the club is not up for sale, that they're not up into changing the model of the club as of right now. I mean, Chiqui Arce has a lot of power over everything that happens in football, not just in the first division, but also in the younger league. So he's looking into the young players to bring them up to the first division. That's also kind of the project going on in Cerro Porteño. But yeah, that has to come with the titles. That has to come with the wins, right? If they don't get that, the people are going to be behind their backs. And yeah, they had a black August, like they were calling it here. They had a really bad month, but after that was over, Cerro Porteño has looked like themselves again, and Chiqui Arce is doing it again. And I think they're just going to fight it till the end. And I'm loving it that Nacional, an underdog, is in there in the fight. And more than anything, Roberto, I'm going to say that out of these 4 teams that are fighting, 3 out of those 4 teams have Paraguayan coaches. 3 out of the 4. Only Daniel Garnero has been able to stay around these new coaches, these young Paraguayan coaches, and that's totally positive. When years back, it was kind of hard to find these many coaches fighting for a title. So I'm really happy about that situation.
Yeah, you got young ones like Julio Cesar Cáceres, who's obviously won titles beforehand, and obviously the experience of Chiqui Arce and Pedro Sarabia as well at Cerro and Nacional respectively. So it definitely is a good thing to see that, that Paraguay could indeed produce these type of managers. So yeah, it will be interesting to see, because I think it'll be a tight race to the end. I still feel as if though it's still, I'm not predicting like a dramatic end like we saw last year between Cerro and Guarani, but certainly I think it'll definitely go right into the end of the league campaign. So we'll definitely wait and see what happens there as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.